Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar, How to Create Thriving Health with a Lifestyle Prescription, all while reducing your dependency on pills and placebos. So welcome to everybody from all over the world. And so, if you failed at how to escape the hamster wheel of chronic disease in the past, it's not your fault. If you've been concerned in the past that you can't succeed with escaping the hamster wheel of chronic disease, put those fears to rest for this webinar. And why is it so hard? Well, it is really hard to escape chronic disease because the signals from our society, the growing pains of health science, the cosmic joke, meaning that we always think that we know everything. As doctors or medical practitioners, the pharma companies being good at what they do, health practitioner education. And so we are here to show how to create a lifestyle prescription, all while reducing the dependency on pills and placebos. And that is my personal commitment in this time here. And so my goal for this web class is that I want to help people who want to identify the root of disease and the people who want to learn the key factors of a lifestyle prescription. That is that something that has worked for others. And so without taking medications, if they're not going to work, and also if they're being stuck in a hamster wheel of emotional and physical pain. I feel like the only way to identify the root of disease is by learning the key factors of what go into a lifestyle prescription that actually have been shown to transform health, and then actually through escaping it. And the best way I know of how to do this is to this Thrive Medicine lifestyle prescription. And so who am I? My name is Dr. Andres Zuleta. I run Samasta Academy. I am the founder of Samasta. I trained in neuro-linguistic programming. I am a trained physician. I've also initiated as a shaman because I've been interested in anything that can help a human being heal, as I'm going to tell you guys how that came about. I trained as a life coach, trained as a health coach, currently practicing hospital medicine. I'm an integrative medicine specialist. I treated thousands of patients across 4 continents, and I'm also the co-founder of the WellCare Summit. And so my story was that, I was an immigrant. I came from Colombia with a dream of becoming a doctor. And the thing was that I was self-sabotaging by taking one step forward and one step backwards. To make things worse, I felt terrible because I would make progress and then I would poison myself with alcohol, end up broke with a hangover and full of guilt. And I felt even worse about this situation because I knew that I could do better. I felt like a failure because I was burning everything that I had built. And so the problem was that after years of self-sabotage, I actually ended up arrested in a cell, in a jail cell. And I had lost my dignity. My life was in 1,000 pieces at that time, and I almost lost my career. And then, as if by chance, something amazing happened, and I dove into the science and the art of healing. And it was now crystal clear to me how to help people overcome disease, because I saw I could overcome my own disease, and how to really create a life filled with meaningful work and meaningful relationships. I also learned that you don't have to be in chronic disease forever. So as a result, I dove into the science of and the art of healing, learning anything that I could about anything from shamanic practices to the modern medical technologies that I had learned in medical school. And after I did that, I started seeing how many people were actually getting better with lifestyle prescriptions. So suddenly I was combining tools into my interactions with clients and patients, tools that I had learned, and I learned that it helped other people escape emotional and physical pain. And so that's when I realized that the secret was to create new thriving habits. My plan was to start teaching all of these techniques to help people escape disease. So I started teaching these techniques in the hospital, in the clinic, but I didn't stop there. I then started creating online information so that more people could overcome these hardships. After that, I then started teaching online. But there was still a problem. it still took a long time to develop the techniques and the way that I was going to teach it. And it took months and years to get it done, step by step, brick by brick. Many times, even people themselves didn't know what they needed. They just felt empty and lost. And they knew that they needed help in some way, in that they were not getting that help in medications, placebos, or surgeries. So if they were in the hospital, it was often crisis time, and all we could do is kind of patch up and damage control, right? And if they were in the clinic, I only had 15 minutes to go deep, and the talks are often superficial. So I continue to create and learn how to help. And a lot of these ideas were criticized, even though they were evidence based. So I ended up getting so frustrated that I decided to create a better process using technology, strategy, and software to help people escape the hamster wheel of emotional and physical pain while decreasing their dependency on pills and placebos. And I chose to call it Thrive Medicine, lifestyle prescription. After researching the science and the art of healing using my medical knowledge and my personal experience, I created the Thrive Medicine lifestyle prescription. I can now share a reproducible model that helps people travel into a thriving life. I then started to let other people in pain use the Thrive Medicine lifestyle prescription. And as a result of all of these, I was able to achieve the following: help thousands of people around the world how to escape emotional and physical pain, and how to understand how they can design a thriving lifestyle. I created an easy path for everyone who wants to escape the hamster wheel of chronic disease. After creating the Thrive style lifestyle prescription, I was not only able to create the content and the process that help people understand the root of disease, but very importantly, I was able to crack the code for myself to stop my own disease and my own self sabotage. And in the end, all of this means is that I am now able to help a lot more people achieve a thriving lifestyle with a lot less pain and effort than I spent. And how does this apply to you? Well, just like I found the root of disease, just like I replaced the habits that were sabotaging my life into habits that build life, just like I developed habits to systematically transform daily struggles into wisdom, just like I became aware of things in the environment that enhance health, you can too. You see, I've traveled all over the world and I've seen patients all over the world from all walks of lives. And so that has allowed me to see patterns. And so here, from those patterns, I created three main key principles that I'm going to share with you today. And we will cover this in this webcast. The first secret is how to discover the root of disease. The second secret is how to discern through all of this overwhelming diet advice. The third one is how to replace traumatic experiences into wisdom to thrive, which I think is a very, very, very important part. So, and at the end of it, I created a rewarding, crazy surprise for whoever stays at the end, but it's whoever stays at the end. And, you know, this is just to reward those who sit and put the time into their health, because I know for myself, that was hard too. And I needed any help that I could get. So this is just a, disclaimer saying, you know, this is only my own opinions from my own experience, from my own medical knowledge, but this does not replace any type of advice that you get from your doctor. So if you want advice on any one of these issues to actually change the way that your healthcare is being managed, discuss with your doctors. So secret number one, how to discover the root of disease. Well, some people who are looking for thriving health might think, I don't understand how escaping the hamster wheel of chronic disease is gonna work for me. Well, let me tell you a story. One time in the emergency room, this lady came into the emergency room, and she was very ill at that time. Her sugars were super high and she was obese, and you could see in her face the amount of self-defeat that she had. So I started talking to her because she was coming into the hospital because her sugars were so high. And I asked her, I said, have you always been ill. And she says, no, I was actually really fit up until I was like 50. But then I said, what happened? And she says, I had a horrible breakup. And this person made me feel really, really bad about myself. And after that, my head and my health went down the hill. And 5 years later, this lady was overweight, her sugars were out of whack, and organs in her body were failing. And so this was such an important factor because it gave me a window, and it gives you a window into what is the root of disease. Is it the root of disease of her diabetes a lack of insulin? Or was it that incident that happened? Right? And so you see, there is something called childhood adverse experiences. It was a study done in San Diego by a Kaiser doctor and the CDC. It became a huge study. And the amazing thing was that many ladies like these that were overweight lost the weight when this doctor was doing an approach with fasting, right? But that's not the point of this story. The point is that these people gained their weight back. And this doctor was so troubled with this that he started interviewing all of them. And he said, turns out that many of them started gaining weight when there was something that triggered in them an event that had happened in their childhood. And many of them were sexual abuse or physical abuse or neglect. And then that triggered into what is called the Childhood Adverse Experience Study, which was a huge study. And what this study showed us is that actually every time we had an adverse effect as a child, it increased our chances of having a chronic disease, which is crazy, and that the chances stack up. And so this also happens when we are adults. So it's not only when we're children. And so you might also be thinking, I don't understand how this lifestyle prescription thing is going to help me with my chronic disease, help me with to get to the root of my problem, and help me since my situation is so different than her. Well, the truth is that the cause of disease is not often a deficiency of a medication, just like we were talking about. You see, somebody comes in with a heart attack. So we start with these E's, right? They have these E's. They don't have E's in their chest and they come with pain. So here you can see a picture of that part of the heart is dying. Right now with medicine, we have an amazing medical system, but it has its limitations because it is a reductionist system, right? And I'm going to explain to you how that happens. So this person comes in with chest pain. We see that they're having severe chest pain. The amazing thing is we can check a blood work. We can check the electrical activity of the heart. We can now check even the electromagneticity of the heart and see that there is a part of the heart that is dying, right? And then we can even say, okay, that part of the heart is dying, so we're going to give this patient a pill. We're going to put him through an angiogram. We're going to give him surgery if he needs it. And then the patient goes home and they are back to all the things that were causing them a lot of pain. You see, but there is an emerging paradigm. There is an emerging paradigm in medicine that is looking at everything, at the whole picture, just like an ecosystem. You see here, you see the moon and the sun. And if you're into nature or if you're into sailing, for instance, you know that the moon and the sun controls the tides. So that's an ecosystem, and that changes the way that we perceive the world, right? And so then you can zoom in even more, and then there is an emerging paradigm that depending where in the world you are, there is different climates, right? And depending on those climates, actually you are more prone to specific diseases or not. And so this is interesting because we can zoom even more, and depending on your community, there is more diseases or not, more risk for a specific disease, and even in your family, right? And so then we can now realize that the ecosystem makes such a big impact. On the left, you see an unhealthy stream, and on the right, you see a healthy stream. Things have been worked out, waste has been put into place. It's a smart city, right? And it's a healthy city, and this has major impacts in our lives. And then we can dive in deeper into the individual to we are just like a computer. And so to the point where we can see our senses is our ecosystem, what we can taste, what we can see, what we can touch, what we can smell, what we can hear. That's all the input that comes into our body, and it affects our health. And we go even deeper now, and we realize that the stomach and the bacteria in our stomach is a huge factor in our health. And this is what they call it, the microbiome. And the genes within these bacteria are way more than the number of genes, human genes, that we have. So they have a huge impact in our health. And so these medicines, and the way that this is being looked at is being looked at by translational medicine, functional medicine, complementary and alternative medicine, integrative medicine, globalization of medicine. And so all of these fields in their own different ways are putting this whole picture together so that the patient can be treated. And so what is the root of disease? Well, it is just like what it is a root with many branches, with a soil, and depending on the ingredients of that soil, the root might be sick or not. You see, 7 out of 10 deaths among Americans are from chronic disease. And these chronic disease are due to unhealthy diet or some type of toxin and or physical inactivity. Two main things. So when we look at the root of disease, is not one thing. The root is just like a root. It has many different roots. It's genetics, poor digestion, trauma, medications, nutritional deficiency, lack of sleep, stress, toxins, infections, which leads to a disease, which are the branches of the tree, which then lead to the leaves or the symptoms that we see. So many times these medications that we take are used for the symptoms, not for the root. So a great example of this is how impactful the stress is in our lives is the Monday effect. There's been studies that have been done that show that people die on Mondays more than any other day. And then somebody even went even farther and studied Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and they even have that effect. Thursdays and Fridays are a little bit better. So crazy, right? How much our jobs and our stress impacts our health. So now going back to the root of disease, I want to leave you with something. So a disease, let's take for instance like rust, right? Is a mechanism and you need certain ingredients. So here we have the iron, the oxygen, and the electrolyte solution. This happens and you see rust, just like when you see rust in a nail, without getting all confused. So we can say, okay, what is the root of the rust of that this is? We can say, well, because the cathode and the anode and the electron gives one electron, takes one electron, this happens, and then you end up with rust. Is that the root of the disease though? Is it go deeper? Does it go deeper? Can it go deeper into saying, okay, well, is how the atoms work and the electromagneticity of the ions and all of this, and you can go deeper and deeper and deeper, right? But then where do you get to? Well, I was listening to Dr. Zillinger and the Dalai Lama. If you're not familiar with the Dalai Lama, he's a Buddhist. If you are, of course, you're going to just smile. Of course, I know who the Dalai Lama is. And then Dr. Zillinger is the guy who you see on your left. And he is one of the leading quantum physicists in the world. So they were having a conversation. And Dr. Zillinger said, well, in quantum physics, you can go deeper and deeper, just like what we were doing with rust. Why does that happen? Why does that happen? Why does that happen? Why does that happen? And you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And then he says that there is a point that past that point, you cannot divide anymore. Past that point, you don't know. You are only making inferences, meaning you're only making guesses. And then the Dalai Lama said at the same time, said, oh my goodness, it's the same in religion. You can know a lot of knowledge, even I, but I don't know everything because there is a point that past that point, there is a point of interest. So when I heard this, I said, it is the same in medicine. It is the same in medicine. We can go deeper and deeper and deeper as to why a disease can happen, but there is a point of inference. There is a point that past that point we don't know. And that is, my friends, the root of disease, meaning that moves, that point of inference moves as science gets better and better. But remember that the root of disease is not the seed of disease, and the seed is not the source of that seed. And that's when it comes into place the point of inference, that there is a lot that we don't know, right? And that's okay. In Bhutan, they deal with this part of life very well. They actually meditate on death every day. And they say that it increases their happiness because it allows them to see the beauty of life and the beauty of not knowing that past that point of inference. So, and we just enjoy life to a deeper level, right? And so that's a great lesson from Bhutan. And so that is, my friends, the root of disease. Remember the point of inference, and then remember that the root has many branches, and then the soil and all the ingredients in the soil. So every disease has different ingredients. Now, secret number 2, how to discern through all of these crazy diets. I'm going to tell you a story. I used to have a hard time when patients asked me about a diet, because in medical school, we don't learn about diet. So I had to do all of this on my own. You see, many people who are looking for thriving health says, I'm not good with following diets. Even if I do the right thing, is not going to work for you. But I'm going to share with you another story. You see, I used to believe that, for instance, type 2 diabetes was a chronic and progressive disease until I discovered that it was actually a reversible disease. Then I discovered that you could actually do a lot to influence that with diet, and that actually diet was the medicine. And I realized that the word medicine actually means appropriate action, appropriate action. And so this blew my mind, because then I discovered that diet was so important, and that medicine actually means taking appropriate action to reach health. And so I also discovered a method called crowding out. So I'm going to break that down for you. Well, but some people who are looking for thriving health also might think, I'm not a person whom diets work for. I'm not good at keeping these diets. I'm not a person who believes in this kind of stuff, right? Well, the truth is that you don't have to be good with following diets and getting rid of the stuff that you love. And if you can eat, you can do this. So diet, in my best health interest, means that we take and we realize that we are all different, which is called bioindividuality. Then we realize that there is something called crowding out. And then we realize that there is primary, secondary, and what I call foundation. Is like the foundation of our energy, right? Of our nutrition. And I'm going to break all those things down. So you see, bioindividuality means that we're all different. If I eat a banana and you eat a banana, our sugars actually go very high, very differently. But then, even though that's important, what we have to realize is that there is principles. For instance, in this study, they said that in 12 months, most people that lost about 15 kilograms, actually their type 2 diabetes went away. So even though we are all different, there is principles that work for all of us, or most of us. And so these principles are different diets, right? And these different diets work for many different things. So for instance, the ketogenic diet is great for people who have seizures, 30 to 60% reduction in seizures. The Ornish diet has been studied extensively in reversing heart disease. The Blue Zone diet is where, in the areas in the world that people live the longest, this is actually what they eat the most. And so it's important, because we realize that, going back to the factor that we are all different, right? This is a study that showed about the sugar that I was telling you, that if I eat a banana and if you eat a banana, our sugars actually go differently. So it's very important for us to actually take into account that we are all different. That is called bio individuality. But a good rule of thumb is 95 to 5. That means 95% of your food should be good, nutritious food, meaning real food, fruit, vegetables, things that come from the earth, things that you know where they come from and that you know are, for the most part, with common sense, good for you, right? And so I don't want you to stop eating something that you don't want to stop eating, or something that you really love. Instead of thinking about it that way, I want you to think about it in this sense. I want you to think about it to eat more. Eat more of the good stuff. So this method is what's crowding out. What that means is that you can only fit so many people in an elevator. So if you eat the good stuff, there is no room for the bad stuff, right? And so that is only the tip of the icebergs, because you see, this is only secondary nutrition. This is part of where our energy comes from. But our main sources of energy is called primary nutrition, which is the iceberg underneath. Primary nutrition is our purpose in life, our physical health, our community, our social health, and our financial security. All of these factors have been proven scientifically to have a direct impact into our health. And the lowest these factors are, the more impact damaging our health, and the higher they are, the more they have building our health. And then, furthermore, I believe that there is even one more step of nutrition, which I call foundational nutrition. Foundational nutrition, for example, is when something happens to us, like an injury, we get rejected, we have somebody is treats us in a really demeaning way or humiliating way, or we're very angry. That actually takes a lot of our energy, and that energy we're not putting into the things that we love, into creating a thriving life. So how do you deal with this? And so this is called reframing. You have to reframe it, and that actually gives you a boost of mind space to be able to act in your best interest. So that takes me to secret number 3. Secret number 3 is how to replace traumatic experiences into wisdom to thrive. So some people say that, I don't know how the environment is hurting me. I don't know if I have a pattern that is hurting me. I don't know how to reframe. I don't know what that even means. And I don't even know if there's patterns that I have that have to be reframed. So let me explain. You see, I used to think that people came into the hospital and because of the medications, they got better. But then I noticed that a lot of times with fluids and not giving them any food at all, what we call NPO in the hospital, and no environmental exposures, which is what it is, a controlled environment, they got better. And so I realized that shamans help people do this by helping them reframe and become empowered to take different actions to have a controlled environment for themselves, meaning changing their habits, what went into their bodies, what went into their ears, their eyes. It's often that the shamans would, give people some sort of task or mission to go to to actually take a break from what they were doing, from the patterns of everyday life, to change the pattern in a different way. And so that was so important. And I'm going to tell you a story of a patient that came into the hospital super ill, very young fella, and his sugar was so high, right? And I went into his room, and then I noticed that he had one of these sodas in the bed, and he didn't know how much sugar was on these sodas. So I showed him this picture, and he actually had the Nestea right there, and he had two of them, and his family had brought them to help him because he had a green, he looked healthy, to help him get better. And this was actually killing this person. It was actually making him sicker and sicker, and he would drink multiple of these um, during the day, ending up in the hospital. So in the hospital, we gave him some insulin, but actually the night where I asked him to stop drinking this and we gave him fluids, he didn't even require that much insulin. His sugars dropped, and his insulin amount of insulin that he required was actually a lot less because he wasn't putting so much sugar into his body, right? And so how do we actually have that person break that pattern or reframe what was happening, because his family was actually bringing this for him and he believed that this was good for him? You see, there is a study in Finland that shows the power of how much the environment house in us. And there's a lot of growing evidence that shows that building resilience, that means being able to reframe ourselves, helps our brain and helps our health. And this is where Finland is. And in Finland, when the government went into a campaign to actually get hospitals and restaurants and doctors and everybody together to have the right food and all of this, they actually decreased cardiovascular, so mortality, so death from heart attacks, in by 57% in men 35 to 64. Crazy, right? So they liked the study so much that they kept doing it, and they were actually over 5 more years were actually able to 20 years later, they were actually to decrease that by 75%. So it's amazing to see how the environment can influence us. So it's really important. So one of the antidotes that we have for that is that of reframing, for us to learn how to actually transfer this painful stimulus into actually wisdom to thrive. You see, some people also think that this is woo-woo stuff. This can't help my illness. Identify if my environment is a factor in my health or disease. I don't know how to do that. And so, the truth is that we can break down the different patterns that increase our risk of chronic disease. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And we can learn rituals that have been used since ancient times and now with modern psychology to help people break these patterns and create peace. And this is what is called a pattern interrupt, where the chain is cut. And so, and a great way to do this, to explain this, is, for instance, the American Heart Association showed that the way they're trying to actually change heart disease in the US is by what they call the 7 key factors, or Life Simple 7. And their goal is to decrease heart disease by 20% with this Life Simple 7. Smoking, physical activity, healthy diet, body weight, control of cholesterol, blood pressure, and blood sugar. And how do you do that? Before, most of those is through behavior. And how do you change behavior? Is through reframing the belief system, ourselves, looking at ourselves in a complete way. So let me ask you a question. Are you enjoying this webinar so far? We've covered so far secret number 1, which was how to discover the root of disease. Secret number 2, how to discern through all of this overwhelming diet advice. Secret number 3, how to replace traumatic experiences into wisdom to thrive. So, who wants to take things to the next level? So, put in the Q&A box, I am ready. And if you are ready, I want you to hit the link right there. If you are not, that's okay. I hope that this information was super useful for you in many different ways and that it served you the most possible. I hope that that is the case. And if you're not ready to go to the next level, no problem at all. And we hope that this information was as useful for you as it has been for us. If you are ready to take it to the next level, click the link right there, and I'll see you in the inside.